I'm going to kind of talk about what I think public art does in maybe sometimes a bad way. I'm going to talk about what I think public art does for me as a maybe practitioner. And I'm going to talk about some public art that I might have done, which may be public art, it might not be, I'm not quite sure yet. And the kind of things that I'm going to describe are truths, but they're not the entire truth and they're not the whole truth, they're just part of a multitude of truths that I think are part of this kind of work. This is a thing that I have recently made in Possil, not far from here. And this kind of came about through I've been working in the Hawthorne Housing Cooperative for about 3 years, and I was very, very much encouraged to obviously consult the community in this work. There's 3 cul-de-sac spaces. At the end of each cul-de-sac space there's a kind of big concrete retaining wall, and behind there used to be more social housing which has been demolished and knocked down over the years. And so these areas were seen as potential spaces for action, and I was to consult with the community about what they would want to happen in those spaces and then try and do something that would meet their needs and desires. So people suggested they would like a mural, and then people suggested they would hate a mural, and people suggested there should be places where people could play, and then people said they hated the sound of kids playing. And on it went, and on it went, and on it went. And so I was kind of left in a situation where I'm often left, where I think, well, what is the point in doing anything at all? Just back out, go home, forget about it. And so it started kind of showing me actually the importance of the prototype, testing ideas at a level that actually can be undone, amended, and edited. And in this situation, what I ended up trying to create was a mural which didn't use paint, so it took away the fear of graffiti, but it was still sculptural. It was something that people could participate in the making of as well, or observe in the making of, but again, without any particular purpose other than to kind of engage people visually and suggest a different and alternative condition for this wall. And that's happily still there about 6-7 months after. But again, it was more, the learning from that was more about accepting that, consensus is an impossible dream, and too often in public art, it's an impossible dream that people feel they need to find before they take action. And I'm kind of interested in maybe taking action and using the act of making art as a kind of investigative tool as well as a kind of an outcome. So this is an image by L.S. Lowry, and this is a painting. So as a painting, it is in itself an object, a cultural object. But what I'm more interested in is the fact that it depicts a culture that I'm kind of keen to try and recreate in the situations and the conditions that I work in, which is a culture of a kind of proximity to diverse ranges of experience and delight and opportunity within life. And so within this image you see the football ground, you see people going to the football, you see men, women, children, you see where they live, you see where they work, you see where they play, and increasingly within kind of common society, all of these things are kind of getting stripped away from us and departed. During the lunch break, I had an opportunity to stick in a bit of a slide because I was worried about how I might describe myself. And I'm an architect who rarely designs buildings. I'm an urban designer that doesn't draw plans. I've been a lead artist on production of things and actions that could be described as art, but I move between various levels of comfort and discomfort regarding or identifying or describing myself as an artist. I'm a bad man trying to do good things in a state of tension about whether those things are good for myself, good for others, or any good at all. My involvement in public art is perhaps therapy, which is maybe what this talk is, and an attempt to find self-worth. I rarely finish anything, but in my work with communities, I hope I leave enough behind that means things will be finished without me. I'm a mess, but messiness is good, right? I'm constantly trying to throw myself back together, but throwing togetherness is also good, right? That was in this morning's talk, so that was useful. And so perhaps the common thread in my work in the public realm or public sphere is that I go to places, create a mess, and then help people throw things back together. And perhaps this is art, and perhaps it isn't, perhaps it doesn't matter, but then why am I here? Because it's a public art symposium thing. So that was what was on my mind this morning. Anyway, I just thought I'd get that off my chest. Anyway, back to the actual talk. And so this is what's kind of happened since the kind of image of in the L.S. Lowry painting, where as a society, we kind of keep trying to find new utopias. And increasingly, artists are involved in trying to articulate those kinds of utopias. And I'm, through learning and qualification, I'm an architect. And as an architect and a profession, we get blamed for a lot of stuff, which is sometimes fair and sometimes not. And you can kind of see, like Glasgow's now going through kind of its fourth wave of knocking everything down and building it in about 100 years. And we kind of knocked down all these tenements because they kind of fostered ill health, and loads of people lived in them in a cramped, unsatisfactory way, and we built these tower blocks. And then we're just in the process of knocking them down because people live in them in an unhealthy and overly cramped and unsatisfactory way. And we just started rebuilding these tenements. So in about 20 years, I think we'll probably rebuild some new tower blocks, and we'll just kind of continue that kind of cycle of kind of mindless demolition and rebuild. And then you've got situations like this. It's a couple of sinister fuckers, if I ever saw them, who, and this is kind of symptomatic of the way society has gone in terms of the kind of appropriation of culture as a consumptive thing rather than a creative thing, where you have things on the TV and things to buy that make you feel bad, actually. You know, and this pretends it's making you feel good because it's entertainment, but it's saying that if you don't make cake in a certain way, you're shit. And it becomes kind of competitive, and actually it kind of, for me, makes people fearful to act. And what I try and do through my work is take away the fear of acting and the fear of doing things, because people are scared to do things because they keep getting told that you need to have learnt it, you need to know about it, you need to pay for it, you need to have some kind of pre-existing skills. And I think that in a lot of communities I work in, people say there's so much apathy, but I actually think that most apathy is just fear. And it's the fear of doing things wrong, and it's the fear of being laughed at, and it's the fear of moving out of your comfort zone. And again, I think there's a role for public art in reducing that fear of action. So, and the kind of work I'm doing, I'm trying to reduce and ever increasing isolation from the things that make life worth living, and that isolation is being kind of exacerbated through the way our physical environments are being kind of stripped apart and kind of put into different zones where activity then becomes hard to reach. It's not just geographical. Isolation can be through economic means, educational means, cultural, social, spiritual, and also productive. So I think that public art is increasingly used as a tool, or said it's a tool for regeneration, and I found this thing that I wrote once. We now exist in a condition where regeneration relies on two methods of elite-based imposed physical change as a mode of regeneration. The first method is the collaboration between state and private developer through the imposition of housing or retail or workspace, usually large scale and large investment. In many cases, the aim here is to create a more visually amenable condition that appeals to a higher social and economic class, a strategy that has become referred to as gentrification and in some cases social engineering. This method often compromises the needs of the end user by placing profit as primary motivation for investment. Decision-making within this type of development process is not solely focused on creating the most favourable and amenable condition for the improvement of people and place, but instead driven by what can be achieved to maximise return on the financial investment. If these conditions are not desirable for immediate private investment, then local authority or government imposes an artistic and cultural elite, like me, to administer a form of cultural methadone to keep people calm and sedate while waiting for conditions to improve sufficiently to entice the large-scale monetary investment that is perceived to be required to create impact. This method allows a veneer of action and change to occur, which often does very little to fundamentally change individual and organisational patterns of dysfunctional behaviour and bureaucracy that creates the condition of crisis in the first place. So there's me just saying nothing works at all. Nothing really ever changes, so that's another thing I'm wrestling with. There's the therapy coming out again. So here's some stuff that I think public art does, maybe that it shouldn't do. Public art has started to develop into a form whereby its value is determined not by the quality success of art, but by its worthiness. This worthiness is achieved through community, a social engagement, consultation. And again, these are these truths that are kind of truths, might not be truths, but they're points for discussion. And what this has done is it's created an industry, because within community artwork, there's gold in them there hills, right? It's awash with money now. Artists can make a living out of doing this kind of socially engaged practice. And that's a community artist there on the left, heading into the hills to make some money out of community and social engaged practice. And it's become, you know, and I think there's now a tension emerging that I see between the level at which this is just another industry and is another almost consumer industry, and the level to which it actually does any real good and use. And these are some of the things that make me do things. So 2 pie charts that communicate why I think we might do the things that I appear to be doing. And so I'm wrestling with all this stuff all the time, you know, in the previous slide as well. So I'd like to make the world a better place, probably 28%. I want to make a cool thing, maybe 90%. Money, 15. Curiosity, 22. Ego, 26. That's pretty big. And then once I've kind of wrestled with all that stuff, I kind of make actions based on probably fear or desire, and I'd probably say that's kind of equal parts. So that's kind of what I'm dealing with. Public art also creates an opportunity to develop new or appropriate old social, cultural, historical narratives in an attempt to make people feel better about themselves and the community. Public art reminds people how much better things used to be. Public art creates a sense of ownership, which actually is not as good as actual ownership. I don't want a sense of ownership over my car, my house, my toys. You know, it's kind of like public art's become some kind of like hire purchase weird thing where I say, oh, you feel like you own it. That's okay. I'd rather own it. So, public art appropriates and exploits people's natural and naive creativity and represents it as art, like proper art, in a process of mutual yet needless validation between artist and participant. And this is done in these steps. You go to a place and you gather a local group of local people into a room. You then get them to think about their community's past, present or future. You then get them to either write, draw, photograph something in relation to one or all of the above things. The artist then applies that stuff to an object or a surface or a thing. Everyone feels good about themselves. Invoice. Retreat off back to your own edgy bit of the city, which you're in the process of gentrifying, or if you've been doing this a while, you maybe can probably afford to head off back to the West End or the South Side. That's my take on it. Anyway, public art also diverts and it distracts. And where I feel I'm lucky and what I'm interested in is ideas and agency. And I think that as creative practitioners, I value my ideas and my agency, but I also appreciate how lucky I am to get to express them. Contemporary society is increasingly fearful of both ideas and agency, and I think that reiterates what Matt was saying about the kind of neoliberal model of action. And then this is often reflected now in the types of spaces that we now create for kind of play and common activity in common society. So in a more positive way, I think public art allows me, as an artist, to actually develop my own language, and then practice that then maybe informs my architecture as well. And in this case, I'm just playing, and I think sometimes that's okay. I think sometimes, again, we try so hard to justify our creative acts through its kind of worth towards other people, and sometimes it's okay just to play and indulge yourself, and to try and learn something on your own terms in that way. And in certain cases, that then starts to lead on to and inform other things that I might end up building or making. Public art allows me to also observe and understand the condition. In this case, it allows me to appreciate why a bench has been disrupted or split and propose maybe simple ways of putting that back together. It allows me to investigate a place that maybe I shouldn't be. Public art allows me to articulate my own understanding about a context and condition and test it against other people's own feelings and thinking. This actually last summer, Tara, August, we were in Gdansk, looking at ideas of tangible and intangible heritage, and you can see the tracks that used to go into the docks, and then regeneration has come along, and regeneration has stopped just over where my colleague Ben is, and it's just kind of totally cut off these original beautiful tracks that used to serve all the different dockyards in Gdansk. And again, we managed to go and find cobbles that had been ripped up over there to create this new landscape, which is the start of trying to appropriate that place for commercial activity, and just decided we'd just kind of put back the line in the tracks and just try and make a simple point. We got into a lot of trouble off Polish security, but they eventually relented when they just saw how ridiculous it was that we were going to just carry a load of cobbles, draw 2 lines and then put them back. They thought it was hilarious. This is a dog shit bin that I painted gold because I felt it didn't look very nice. And that's about as simple as that is. But again, it's about making the point about the simplicity of an act and how you can actually improve a condition quite quickly. Public art is a device for introducing new, changing existing, or supporting the development of suppressed behaviours that once enacted continue beyond the involvement of the artist or the instigation of the project. So that is very important to me, and the kind of what I want to do with my own work is to very much not be needed anymore. And so I'm trying to use public art or some kind of creative intervention to kind of test existing behaviours, challenge existing behaviours, maybe support existing behaviour, introduce new behaviour, and hopefully leave enough behind that those behaviours can continue and perpetuate without the need of the artist to maintain a presence. These things have started to emerge. Are meant to help people in the engagement toolkits, place standards. I think all that's bullshit. My toolkits have tools in, and I go and take those tools and build things with people. And in the process of building and designing things, I'm always wrestling with the tension of doing something that is going to dictate behaviour rather than actually inspire people to interpret things and places and objects on their own terms and feel like they can interpret those spaces. And this image is of the Gorbals graveyard, and it's an image that I always kind of show because it shows how a place that is deemed to be very much one thing, about morbid death, loss, actually can be a playground when it's interpreted by the actions of children. And that kind of opportunity for people to change the meaning of the things I make is something that I'm very open to, but it's difficult to design something without designing something. It's very hard, but it's kind of the aim that I have. Again, places like this, interpreted in ways not intended, but in quite delightful ways. So I do that through testing, prototyping place and programme. I've recently been involved in delivering a project opposite Tramway called the Pollock Playhouse that combines elements, graphical, artistic, creative, with different artists, community, but really, other than kind of creating a surface at the front there, the idea is really to create an environment that could be interpreted by people on their own terms with support from myself and others. And so as a kind of instigator of that project, my interest was in allowing people to develop, program themselves, and then there's a negotiation as they develop program with me about how that then generates a place. And all I provided was an infrastructure of pallet pathways, a shipping container, and I let people get on with the rest. Provided tools and provided opportunities maybe that currently don't exist for people, but there are opportunities that they took that they weren't forced. And it also created a public space that was about making, it was about cinema, it was about dance, it was about whatever people in that area wanted it to be in the way that they wanted it to occur. And I didn't really need to get involved at all in apart from like opening the door, you know, that my role in that project became unlocking the gate. Similarly, this is a site in Woodlands that I developed a project with about 5 years ago, involving people, participating, making, interpreting the space on their own terms. And even though it was meant to be, well, it is a community growing space, I was always very keen to try and set an agenda early on that it would be a public space. It wouldn't be the preserve of people who wanted to grow food, but it would be a creative, cultural, artistic space. And again, for me it was about providing an initial infrastructure, but also an initial attitude, an initial ethos that people could then interpret and apply themselves. I mean, I had an involvement in that project for about 2 years. And again, the kind of value is that that project continues. I rarely go there, I rarely visit it, I rarely hang out there, I hear stories about what's happening. And again, it's hard to kind of also sometimes determine to what extent I'm even the author of that project, you know? I know that it wouldn't have happened if I wasn't involved, but I also know that it continues to happen without my involvement, and the kind of line at which I'm responsible is kind of blurred. I find it very hard to kind of, I don't know, take any credit for it as well. And then through doing that project, kind of came up with a proposal for creative workspace next to it, and that's currently just got funding. It's going to be going ahead again without my involvement. And I love these things happening without my involvement. It's very, very important. And so this is what this is trying to do: capacity building, create demand, implement change, but very much create a situation in communities through artistic and creative practice where people start to hold the power, and genuinely people within a location are conditioned rather than kind of institutions. And within Bees in North Ayrshire, I've had an involvement there now for about 4 years, which initially was about kind of mapping the conditions of the town and providing the local community development trust with possible ways that they could intervene socially, culturally, physically. First of all, it was about creating a menu of potential interventions rather than creating an actual kind of physical master plan that was to be assiduously followed. Some of those interventions involved festivals, beer festivals. It involved prototyping activity, not just the prototyping objects and things. It involved making things, quite often rough things, but beautiful things. It involved creating a swimming baths out of hay and black plastic sheet. And all of those things are about just showing the possibilities. It's providing the means and opportunity to experience individual and shared moments of delight that maybe previously were considered incomprehensible due to the limitations of your environment or context. We're continuing this work in the main street, taking over property, and supporting local businesses by providing access to creatives. This is designed by Zag, through photographers, so that rather than trying to replace the businesses that are there with better things, we kind of provide the support that makes those businesses improve on their own terms and builds their capacity. That involves helping people with their shop fronts, graphics. It involves also helping develop websites, access to business consultants, access to training. There's some actual art. Don't really know who owns that shop, so had a bit of fun with that. Signage, simple things, just beautiful hand-painted numbers on each of the shops. Again, graphics, business cards. So this intervention takes many, many different forms and levels. And again, whether it's public art or not is open to debate and discussion. Supporting a local group who've been trying to develop a community garden there, creating a little bandstand. And then for me, as an architect, because I don't do a whole lot of architecture, quite often what I'm trying to do is create conditions where actual architecture becomes inevitable, because you actually facilitate the creation of some genuine demand for it. Quite often community groups think that a building is the answer without thinking about the activity that is needed to actually support that building, really. So I'm interested in trying to create activity, and then over time that activity is successful, then at some point it will need some kind of architecture infrastructure to support it. And that's what's happening in Bees at the moment. Recently supported Bees Trust to purchase a 10-acre site just outside the town. It was a former school for exceptionally bad, misbehaving children, and now it will be a school for less bad, misbehaving anyone. And it will provide all kinds of means of training. On the site there's all kinds of potential infrastructure. There's a chapel, sports hall, workshops, that Victorian mansion house. There's 3 accommodation blocks, 3 detached houses. So the possibilities for the site are quite immense. And having got the money to buy the site, £500,000, really the strategy from my point of view, was actually just to figure it out as we go along. That was it. And by taking ownership and just seeing where demand came from, that was how you kind of lead the development of the site. So you've got a series of options and suggestions, but again, you're not wedded down to one singular plan. And this is what we're working on at the moment, just in Sports Hall, refurbished. And so again, a situation where kind of artistic and creative interventions and my involvement is very much about the thing that happens way beyond the life of that initial piece of artwork or that intervention. Working with Neil during the summer, and Rob and Helen, who from Tactile, who are here, we did a project called Test Unit across the canal. And again, this was about trying to bring art, public art, visual art, graphical art, architecture, all together on one side, and without any kind of preconceived notion of what would be produced, create a kind of an educational situation, a learning situation that people could engage with, to show that actually with very simple resources, but with action, you can kind of make quite a quick and immediate change. So we built a temporary workshop on the site as a group of 25 participants. We also held debates and discourse around the kind of issues that we're trying to address, provocative talks, and within 4 teams over the course of a week. This is Neil's big picture of Muhammad Ali, which I think is actually still over there. This is a little pub that I made on the site of a previous pub. This is not an alcohol selling pub, this was a foraging pub, selling kind of nettle beer and different items. But again, this kind of existed really just for one day, and I don't know, maybe that's a failing of the project, or maybe that wasn't even the point of the project. But I think you have to go into all these situations with a kind of certain openness and a certain kind of clarity about what you're doing and what you're trying to do. And ultimately, in doing all of this work, I kind of always not expose myself in a criminal way, but sometimes. But I'm kind of exposing my own vulnerability as a way of drawing people into these processes. And so quite a lot of the time, I've never really known how to do anything until after I did it. And I want other people to feel like they can also take that leap, that actually you don't have to know before you try and do something. And I think that's the opportunity that is increasingly denied to people, but I think that's where, for me, public art has a real role in kind of opening that out as a possibility. Thank you very much. Cheers.